Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Silva Skillet. Today I'm pleased and honored to have my good friend Charlie Bass, Congressman Charlie Bass, and he's going to do some cooking today rather than just doing politics, but we'll get into some of that too. And we always get to start. Charlie, tell us why you're doing this again and tell us a little bit about
Well, if you're
what's
talking
happening.
about cooking, I'm doing it because I want to try to impress you. If you're talking about why I'm running for re-election to Congress, it's not about the Congress, it's about America. And getting this country's fiscal house in order, getting the economy turned around, doing it kind of the New Hampshire way, which is to get spending under control but be practical and work with people a bit to resolve problems. You serve in the state legislature. You know that it's not that you don't win when it's your way or the highway. So my campaign now is based upon a budget that is based on the so-called Simpson-Bowles Bipartisan Deficit Reduction Committee, and also on the fact that we've had 4 years of pretty tough times in this country. Isn't it time to try something a little bit different?
I'm with that.
So
without too much politics right now, what are you going to make for us today?
well, I'm going to make a dish called tomato casserole.
Okay.
It sounds pretty dull. However, there's a little history involved in this. My grandparents, my mother's father and mother and their grandparents, my mother's father rather, came from Florida. And they were pretty limited means. They were basically sharecroppers. My grandfather didn't own a pair of store-bought shoes until he was 11. He went to the University of Florida and built his own desk to take with him there because he didn't have any furniture. And the one thing, however, about living in Florida was that you didn't have to worry about food. You didn't have a lot of meat, you didn't have anything particularly fancy, but you did have basic vegetables. And so my mother used to cook this dish, tomato casserole, that we loved as children. Now when you see the finished product come out of the oven, you will see why as children we called it train wreck. So what it consists of basically is tomatoes, onion, bread, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt and pepper. That's it.
Good
Nothing
summer
else.
dish.
And the beauty of it, yes, as a summer dish, is that it consists of what you can buy for nothing, basically, now at farm stands. And what I brought with me is a box of tomatoes and some onions from my stepmother's organic truck farm over in Peterborough, Rosalie's Garden. And Rosalie has been in this business, organic vegetable farming now, since 1972. That's, I guess, 40 years now, or 78. I guess I was wrong. 78, excuse me. And so what I have are tomatoes. Now, why don't you hand me?
Over here.
Yeah, let's start. Give me an onion. I'm going to give one for me and one for you,
Now
Pete.
that's an onion.
This is an onion. I picked it this morning.
How many tomatoes would you like?
Well, stand by. Let's just do this one thing at a time
Okay.
here. We're going to take this onion,
These tomatoes are great, by the way.
and you take this off, that off. Pull off the skin. We're not going to use very much of it, so you're going to get an awful lot. Do you like onions?
Everything you have in this box I love so far.
Okay, so real quick, you take the onion off. Take it off like this. Cut the end off of it. You know why? So you don't cut your fingers. And then you just go like this with the knife, this way, this way, this way. You done this before, Pete?
A couple of times.
I bet you have. Like this. And then this way. That's about right. Take that, stick it right in there like that, see?
So we don't use any oil or anything.
Oh yeah, you're going to get a little bit of butter. Then you take
Butter, there you go.
a little bit of butter. I forgot to mention that. There we are. This is all that you're going to have, though. You're going to put that butter. Oh, I want to mention another thing. You're not going to see any measuring cups. This is a dish that you
like
make to taste, and you will find that it has enormous potential to do whatever you want with it. Now, what you have here, a little wooden spoon, is some onions, and you're going to caramelize them or cook them very slowly until they get a sort of slightly translucent color. Meanwhile, you grab not fancy bread, but call it, with this size pot, 2 is enough. You get 2, you want to do that? You want to dice it? Okay, make it,
Okay, just
dice it
little
up for
cubes?
me. Yep.
All right.
Dice that up for me. There you go. Now here we have a pot, and it's going to be the pot that we use to cook the casserole in, and we are going to take, that's perfect, and dump it in the pan over here, Pete.
That's going in with the onions.
That's correct. Stick it right in there. That'll absorb, put it all right in there. And what we're going to do, see these beautiful tomatoes from Rosalie's garden? And we're going to, got them all in there? Take the spoon now.
What do we do with our spoon? Oh, I got it right here.
Okay, stir that up. Stir it right up, mix it all up. Get this guy a little smaller, there we go. Perfect, just stir it up and let it keep going. What are we on, low?
So should you use a particular type of bread? Just
No,
white
in
bread,
fact, I wouldn't use terrible bread, but bear in mind, this is a dish that was made by people who weren't buying anything very gourmet. Now, the tomatoes are fresh. If you're making this in the wintertime, and you don't have any tomatoes, you just get 2 large cans of stewed tomatoes, not with the extra stuff added, just stewed tomatoes. I have fresh organic tomatoes, so I'm going to use these, but we have to blanch them because I don't want to cook the skins. So we'll stick those in that water just like that. Stick 2 more. And you know something, since I'm using this pot to make them, I can tell that's just about what I want for tomatoes. So the heat's on, we're letting them blanch. Meanwhile, this is on very low heat, real low, like a simmer. And all I'm trying to do is heat them up and get a little bit of the whiteness out of the onions. It's not absolutely necessary, and I've got it turned up just a little bit more than. Now, I don't know whether you can get the camera over the sink, but in a second, your viewers ought to know, most people know how to do this, but when you blanch tomatoes, you take the skin off, and they're very hot.
We could probably do it right in that sink.
You're right. I didn't think.
See, that's a good thing about Jerry Ross
modern
kitchen here.
Yes.
Everything's all here.
I know, it
See
really
that?
is. So, what we will do, since we're ready to go here, I do not like to do dishes, so I'm going to use the same pot that I used to blanch the tomatoes in to cook the tomato casserole. So we'll take it over here, stick it in the sink, like that. We'll run a little water, get this thing, since I'm not using a pot holder, pull it out, take the skin off, see?
So it only took like a few, not
not even a minute. And you notice I'm running cold water on them now. You core them, see, with a knife, like that. Get that core out. Pull the skins off. Underwater, cool your hand for a second. Just stick the knife in like that. And you pull out the core, see? You wind up with a nice fresh tomato. They look just like the ones that you buy during the winter, except they're fresh. Oops. A little Julia Child moment there. Did you see the squirt across the counter?
You know how many times people reference Julia Child on my show?
That's because she is really was an amazing chef, and she deserves all the credit that she has gotten. I can shut the water off now.
Keep the bread going over here.
Yes, keep stirring that so it doesn't get burned, all right? And we're going to do, this is a small batch. There's no point in boring your viewers by doing 20 tomatoes for a real casserole. We're going to make a real small one here. But these are all beautiful tomatoes, picked this morning, perfectly ripe. And then, so there they are. Take this pan out, which is nice and warm. Set it right here. And you take a little, where's my little knife? Right here. You grab a small amount of butter like that, and you just grease the inside of this pot. You know why? Easier to wash. Remember, I hate washing dishes. You don't have to, but then you have a crusty mess on your hands when you're done. So you have that, and then you stick your tomatoes in here, see, in the pan. That's it. I could use one more, but it's too late. And you break them up with your fingers like this, see? You want to do that?
Sure.
Go ahead. Meanwhile, while Pete's breaking them up, get them kind of, into eighths. You don't have to really mush them up, but get them pretty good. Okay? Then you put the skins in the trash. I will stir these one more time. And then, once you get them all nicely broken up, I think we're done with that one. Turn this off.
Oh,
see what I mean?
There's your Julia Child moment again.
And these are coming along all right. And
how's that?
so, yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good. There you go. Now you can rinse your hands off. The next thing you do is we have a little brown sugar here. We don't have a little, we have a lot. And again, I want to emphasize that this is a dish that was cooked in the South in the 19th century. And people down there didn't have ovens with adjustable temperatures. They didn't get into the measuring stuff. And you notice there isn't a measuring cup out here. So I'm going to put, this is a pretty small casserole. Normally this would be filled up almost halfway up. So I think I'm going to put in just about that much sugar for that. Now the full recipe, which I think you will put on the, maybe I'll put a touch more, there we go, which you put on the internet, calls for 1/4 of a cup of sugar, but that's with a much bigger thing. So you got that sugar in there like that. There you go. This is awful simple. You take this.
It's looking, already, just the onions, anything with onions sauteing is
and you put the,
nice anyhow.
Now normally you might cook that slightly longer, but it's not bad. There's a translucency to those, which is good. And then all you do is stir it up. Remember, this is not meant to be cooked in a gourmet restaurant. These are people that cook this for their families. And you just stir it around a little bit, like this. Now, I'm going to put some salt and pepper on this. And salt and pepper to taste. I'm just going to go like that. And then on the pepper side, I like pepper, so I'm going to give it a pretty good shot here. This is just what I like. There you go. Then stir that in. Now there she is. And then what I will do, just because nobody do this, you know, in the old days, but I think I'll just take a little parsley, again from Rosalie's garden. Got to have some color, don't you think?
Parsley's parsley.
Do you like it or not?
I love parsley.
Okay. And just so that it looks a little better when it comes out of the oven, I'll just stick that on the top, just a tiny bit. There we go. All right. And guess what? You're ready to go.
And that's it.
That's all there is to it. And although it's not ready yet, I did one while you were on your way over here that is in the oven. Yeah, we'll shut that off. Neaten things up.
So now do you recommend, like this?
Okay, now you stick it in the oven at 350 degrees for about 30 or 40 minutes until it's bubbling away. And then what I do is I take the cover off for another 10 or 15 minutes to give it a little bit of a crust. And what you will have when you get this done is a tomato casserole, very nutritious, very simple, very inexpensive, all with local produce except for the bread, but you know, you could bake your own bread and the sugar. And there is unlimited things that you can do with this, because this is the basic dish. But imagine, for example, if you like corn, get a couple of ears of sweet corn, slice the kernels off, dump that in there. You could add just about anything, because what you have here is the foundation of a very interesting casserole that you can make into almost any other kind of dish. My mother used to put rice into it. I think it was to soak up some of the moisture, but you know,
So you put it in, or you put it over the rice?
No, put it in it.
Put it in it.
Raw rice. But I'm not recommending that, because that's not really the dish. This is the fundamental dish, but as you get good at it, you can add things. You could add mushrooms, you can add about anything. And I don't think rice or spaghetti, that turns it into something different. That's an Italian dish.
That's the thing,
This is not Italian, this is Southern. And although my father's side of the family is from New Hampshire, my mother came from Florida. She was born in Jacksonville in 1919, and she died over 40 years ago, but this was one of the dishes that was passed down to her from her father's side of the family.
Now, I noticed that you have it in the metal ceramic pan. Does it make a difference? You use a glass casserole dish?
I
Does it matter?
just snitched it out of the pantry of our house.
I thought you might say that.
But what you do is you cover it at first and let it go for a little while. I'm not sophisticated, and I do a lot of cooking. I like to cook, but I'm a practical chef. As I said earlier, I don't like to use a lot of dishes. I think we have here 2 spoons, 2 knives, and 2 pans. That's it.
In case everyone ever wondered, if Charlie's not a Yankee, I don't know what he is. He's a true New England Yankee right there. So tell us what's going on down there. What can we expect? Are we going to? They're not going to pass a budget in the Senate, right? What are we going to do about that?
As you well know, the country faces some huge challenges, and there's no time to waste. The budget has not been approved by the Senate for over 3 years. The Congress has done none of its appropriations. We have on our side. We finished all but 2 of our appropriations, but the Senate's taken up none of them. The Bush-era tax cuts all expire at the end of the year. There's a payroll tax, temporary payroll tax holiday that's 2% off of your payroll tax. It's been going on now for 2 years. The question is, does it get extended? There are a whole series of tax extenders that have been extended every year now, year after year. The alternative minimum tax fix, the doctor's fix, R&D tax credit, one after the other. What do we do with the wind power tax? There's a whole list of them. What do we do with those? There's a possibility that before the end of the year, the nation's debt limit will be reached, and we'll have to vote on raising the nation's debt, excuse me, with very little to show for it. All of this is pretty grim. And over the last year, I have felt increasingly strongly that both sides have made their positions very clear. Everybody knows that as a Republican, I'm for lower taxes, for small business, for entrepreneurship, for getting rid of the inheritance tax that makes more people do more work in their lives than they don't need to do. It's a tax that's based upon the event of death, and in this nation we have an income tax, not a death tax. Those kinds of issues need to be brought to the table. We need comprehensive tax reform. And for the president to get up there and say that the answer to the deficit and the extension of the Bush-era tax cuts is to tax the rich, first of all, raising taxes right now isn't the greatest idea in the world, but secondly, it doesn't do anything about the deficit, because he's careful not to say that it's for deficit reduction, or if he does, it isn't total. It's a little disingenuous, because it's really to pay for the new programs that he's implemented. So, on the other hand, we can't wait. And as a Republican, I have said that this nation's history has been successful because people like you or me that have great principle, in the end, have been willing to sit down and listen to people who have different views. And compromise is not a capitulation of principle. And I would say that we have the luxury of going longer this way if I thought we did, but we don't. And having the Bush tax cuts expire will raise everybody's taxes by about 25%, right on January 1. Not a good idea. The $1.4 trillion sequester, which I forgot to mention a minute ago, if it goes into effect, defense spending, $55 billion cut, which is over 15% of the whole budget in 1 year, will have a dramatic impact on employers such as BAE Systems around here and all the other smaller defense-related contractors. All of it unnecessary, because in the end, we will work out something different. And that something different is going to be a plan that includes a significant reduction in the growth of spending and a tax reform package that results in increased revenue for this nation that leads to a balanced budget at about 20% of gross domestic product being raised in taxes and about 20% being spent. Right now, our tax revenues are at about 15.9% and our spending's at 25%. That's why we have these huge trillion-dollar deficits every year. They're unsustainable. And so, for me, this election is about trying to work for the American people. They are crying out for us to start talking to one another, stop the brinksmanship, stop the partisanship, and start working with our principles toward a solution that will save this country for your children, or I know they're out trying to make their way in the world right now. They can't, our society and our government can't afford this kind of uncertainty.
Now you're down there. One thing that's interesting to me when you see the different things in the news, and the most recent thing with this whole, when Obama came out and he said how you didn't build that business, someone did it for you. Are you getting letters, and is it just what we see here? Is it really as big as I hope it is?
Well, as a small business person myself, I understand that what he was trying to say was that the system in which you live has helped to make you successful, but it didn't come out that way. What he is implying here is that the government is creating and sustaining business. That is not true. And if I were, as a small business owner, I'd be offended and insulted by that. As one who back in the early 80s, when my brother and I were getting our business off the ground, was driving a 16-foot straight, delivering panels with a sales book in the seat next to me so I could make architectural calls at the same day. I wasn't looking to the government for help. I was looking for orders and deliveries so I could get the orders out the door, satisfy the banks, make my payroll. Uncle Sam was not helping me. We built that business ourselves. Certainly, it's important to have a safe and secure environment. The government does provide incentives for small businesses in certain areas, but they're paid for by us. It's not as if it comes raining down from the heavens. And so, every day I think about the fact that the $1 trillion, or $1.5 trillion that we are spending that we do not have is money that is being borrowed from Lucy and Jonathan, my two children, your children, and all the other younger people around this nation, and it will have to be paid back someday. Or, like the European nations, we're going to inflate our way out of this situation, and that will be devastating for everybody. Because the day that begins to happen, every single thing that you own, every dollar that you make will be taxed, but it'll be taxed by the system, not by anybody who can make a choice.
Well, that's what they're trying to get the internet tax on.
Well, that's another subject altogether. That is actually a battle ongoing between fixed merchants and internet merchants. So without using brand names, it would be the Home Depots or the Walmarts or the Macy's versus the Amazons and eBay and so forth, because the fixed merchants, Best Buy and so forth, they're tied down by their terrain and they have to pay taxes versus the internet companies. I am not in favor of an internet tax. Now, obviously, coming from a state that has no income tax or sales tax to begin with, to me, means that it's just not the New Hampshire tradition. And furthermore, I think an internet tax is the beginning of a process whereby the internet becomes a regulated market and taxed market, and a lot of its spontaneity and ingenuity, if you will, begins to vanish under the oppressive load of government.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in. I want to try this tomato salad
Okay,
right now, because I think it's probably ready by now.
What I did was, about 10 minutes ago, I took the cover off of it. It probably can use a little more time with the cover off, because you want to kind of brown the top a little bit because it looks nicer. So let's see. And I hope that these pot holders work, Pete.
Well, if you scream, we'll know they didn't.
So here we are. It's bubbling away.
Put it on
put it on this thing here.
There
we go. And there you go. A dish that probably, what would you say the total cost of that dish would be? Maybe 50 cents.
Well, in your case, even less, because you got the tomatoes from your own.
Yeah, I know, but if they were for sale at the farm stand, which he runs, it would be $1.50, and you've got enough food there to serve some. At least in the old days, it was a main course. Today, it is probably a side
I tell you,
dish.
It looks great. It smells great. I'm dying to try it.
All right, well, here you go.
I don't want to burn myself, but I'm going to try.
Now remember, this stuff is hotter than water because it's got it's got sugar in it. So. See what you think.
You can hear it sizzling. You gonna have some?
Yeah, sure. Hand me. I'll take that. There we go.
Here's a fork for you.
Here we go.
And have a little bit more.
So there we go. As Julia Childs would say,
Bon appetit.
now you be careful.
Yeah, I know. I'm right near burn here.
What do you think?
Delicious. I'll be on this train wreck any day of the week. So once again, everyone, you can find the recipe online, so you don't have to worry about trying to write down everything the Congressman said. Congressman, I can't thank you enough for coming in.
And remember, Pete, you don't have to measure. You notice I didn't measure. Don't get scared. Try one. If it's a little sweet, try another one. If you put too many tomatoes or not enough bread, but make it the way you like it. Don't worry about the oven temperature. 350 is about the right temperature, but it'll turn out. It's made, it's very flexible. You don't have to be a great chef to make it, and I don't think it tastes too bad.
It's delicious, absolutely delicious. Thanks again, everyone. I want to also thank, of course, GM Roth for giving us this beautiful kitchen every week. Tune in again next week, and we'll be back with another guest for some more politics and food and the Silva Skillet. Take care, everybody.